Hello, everyone. Thank you for letting me share part of your time today. It is greatly appreciated. Just a gentle reminder, hit all the buttons, the like, share, subscribe, all those things that you do when you like something. uh, yeah, I'm in kind of a weird mood today. Also, before I forget, the books are available at authorjerrymitchell.com, or you can go to giveguide90.com and follow the links from there. Now, going to look at something a little sideways, maybe. Not really, but kind of. You'll see where I'm going with this, I think. I think you'll see where I'm going with this. Lamentations 3:40 says, "Let us examine and test our ways and turn back to the Lord." Now, there's a lot of information out there about self-examination, self-reflection, how to look at your inner self. And sometimes, and this is hard to do, we need to be able to step away and kind of look at ourselves from the outside looking in. And I know that sounds a little weird, right? I get that. It sounds a little weird. But really, think of it this way. If you were to meet yourself, would you like you? If you were to be a stranger meeting you, would you like you? That sounds a little weird too, right? But think about it. Think about it. If you walked into a place of business, whether they're a store or a restaurant or a place offering a service, and you had to wait on yourself, would you appreciate it? Either as a customer or as someone who has to put up with you as a customer. You see where I'm going with this, right? I hope. How other people might see you is literally the outside looking in. And it's hard to do that as an individual. And as an individual, it really takes some trying. It does, because you think, oh, I'm okay. I'm okay. Well, Proverbs 26:12, "Do you see a man who is wise in his own eyes? There's more hope for a fool than him." Yeah, when you think too much of yourself, like Galatians 6:3, "If anyone thinks he is something when he's nothing, he deceives himself." Right? As an individual, it's sometimes hard for us to separate ourselves from ourselves so that we can examine ourselves, not from the inside out, but from the outside in. And I'm not talking about the way you dress. I'm not talking about the way you comb your hair. I'm not talking about the car you drive. I'm not talking about the house you live in. What I'm talking about is when people look at your face, what do they see in your eyes? Do they see someone who is genuine, or do they see someone who is maybe in a lot of pain, but putting on a good show? And that pain can be physical, or it can be emotional, it can be spiritual. Do they see someone who may be hurting? As my friend Dr. Sean likes to say, you have your hurts, habits, and hang-ups, right? They see that, but also they see the joy in your eyes because you have something they don't. So as we examine ourselves as individuals, it's kind of hard to do sometimes because you have to be able to step away. It's tough for me to do it. And I know me, right? There's days that I am happy to be around people, and there's days where I'm trying to work out a problem, and it's easier to work out that problem no matter what that problem might be. Usually it's how I'm going to fix something, or how I'm going to build something, how I'm going to present a message that's kind of weird and difficult to present, like this one, but I don't need the interruptions at the same time because it is hard to think about how to explain some of this to people who might not have ever thought about it like this before. But that's on an individual level. That's on an individual level. Near the end of the exile, near the end of the Babylonian exile, Haggai 1:5, this is what the Lord of hosts says. Consider carefully your ways. And he's talking to an entire community. Now, that community can be close friends, family, that kind of thing. If you were on the outside looking in, would you want to be part of that? Now, it's really easy to say, oh, of course, I have really good friends. We have a good time. We talk about things, but how do you talk about things? When you talk about things that you agree with, it's kind of easy to want to be part of that. But when you're talking about the hard things, the things you might not all agree on, how you communicate with each other and how someone might see that, that is when things get a little more complicated. If you can discuss things that you don't agree on in a way that other people find interesting and they want to be part of it, that's a good thing. And I know that even this goes into the workplace where you don't always get to choose the people you might be working with. Somebody else has made that choice for you. So how you interact with people, how you communicate, if you were on the outside looking in, would you want to be part of that? And of course, because this is attempting to give you some insight on how to live the way we're designed to live, we need to look at worship communities, whether it's a church, a synagogue, whatever it might be. If a stranger came in and they were listening to conversations, they were seeing what's going on, would they want to be part of your worship community? Are you welcoming? I know churches that are not. They want people to be perfect when they come through the door. And that's just not going to happen because they weren't perfect either. But it does happen. It does happen. Now, there are some churches that go completely the other way. They'll accept anybody and never ask them to change. They'll never ask them to truly trust their Creator. Basically they're providing what is hopefully a reasonably safe place for people to gather. That's all they're doing at that point. So when we examine ourselves from the inside out, we get one perspective. But when we examine not only ourselves, but our friends and our family, the people we associate with, our worship communities, when we look at that as an outsider looking in, it gives us a different perspective. And yes, it's hard to do, and it sounds a little weird. I get that. It's not like looking at yourself in the mirror saying, do I like me? Because that's actually inward reflection is what that is. But thinking back on conversations, thinking back, if I were overhearing that conversation, what would I think? If I were to meet myself, and science fiction does this all the time, right? The flashbacks and that kind of thing where somebody goes back in time and they get to meet themselves. It can't happen. But in your mind, you can look back and say, when I was having this conversation with this person, if somebody overheard it, would they want to be part of that conversation? Would they want to be involved? What kind of input might they have? Would it be positive? Would it be negative? That's on the outside looking in. And it's hard to do, I know, but it's necessary. Whenever we think about being on the outside looking in, Job 13:23, how many are my iniquities and my sins? Make me know my transgression and my sin. He's saying, it's hard for me. I know I've done these things, but it's hard for me to see it from your perspective because you are on the outside looking in. Show me. Teach me how to do this. Teach me how to do this. That's what Job is saying there. On an individual, it's difficult, but necessary. The people we associate with is a little easier because, you can kind of see the reaction of the people in the group, right? But when a stranger comes into your worship community, whether it's a visitor, a church, or a synagogue, somebody passing through, maybe on vacation, will they like what they see? And I'm not talking about the building. I'm not talking about the way the worship service may flow. I'm not talking about the music. It's the way the people interact with each other. Do the cliques sort of stay together? Do the church ladies in the corner stand there and gossip? Does the pastor look at the new person and judge? Does the committee chairman look at the new person and say, "Oh, fresh meat"? I've seen that happen. I have seen that happen. I've had it happen to me. And it does happen. We need to allow people to see us and not so much judge us, but determine if it's a good fit. If you go buy a new jacket or a new pair of pants, you want them to fit, right? And it's the same sort of a situation when people are interacting with you. Is this a good fit? Can I work with this person? Can I trust this person? Can I deal with this person? And in a group, it's, can I be friends with these folks? But in a worship community, the one question you don't want them to ask is, should I be worshiping with these people? They say they believe, they say they trust God, but their actions are not. One of the things I have found over the years that drives more people away from any worship community than anything else is not the way that particular person may be treated, but it's seeing how others deal with each other in ways that they probably shouldn't. I know one young lady years and years ago, single mother with 2 children. And for a while, people were accepting. People, they thought that it might be okay. But as this young lady was, she was working a full-time job, raising her children, didn't have a whole lot of time to spare to be tremendously involved in that community. Do you think anybody would offer to babysit those children? Do you think anybody would offer to give her a hand when maybe she needed to mow the grass, or maybe she needed to just have somebody watch the kids while she went to a doctor? Didn't happen. Lasted about 6 months. She went somewhere else. I don't blame her. It wasn't a good fit because the people in that worship community just weren't accepting. And it's not that she was a bad person. She probably had more faith than most of the people who had spent 50 years sitting in a church pew. But it happens. It happens. So think about this. And I get it. It's hard to think about it in these terms. If you were on the outside looking in, would you still be part of that? Not because it's convenient, not because it's what you're used to, not because it's habit, but put yourself on the outside and look in and say, do I want to be part of this? What do we need to change to make me want to be part of this? And hopefully, as Haggai said, or as our Creator says through Haggai, consider carefully your ways. As Jeremiah said, examine and test our ways so that we can turn back to the Lord. And that means going back to living the way you're designed to live. Something to think about. Something to definitely think about. Are you inviting people for the wrong reason? Are you inviting people to your worship community for the wrong reason? All you're looking for is numbers. It's the wrong reason. Oh, we want to save souls. Wrong reason. You have to be the example. And if your example is the wrong example, it's not going to be a good fit. Not going to be a good fit at all. So until next time, think about these things. And I do wish you many, many blessings, everyone.